Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome back to your favorite show of the week. It's time for Between Two Beards. I'm Rob Schuh. That's my co-host, Randon McMahon. Randon, welcome to the program. It is going to be a good one. We've got Minicamp madness today, sir.
Ooh, it's crazy. Doctor Strange got no madness on this madness.
It's so crazy. Yes, we are going to get wild. I mean, if you follow us on Twitter, it was already just going to get weird with the, I love that tweet that you sent out about getting on the hype train. A little throwback to, oh God, Scrubs. That was a delightful program back in the day, filled with good comedy, good imagination, and that was a good scene. That's how I feel like getting hyped up about my Niners. I don't know what, like 100 days away from 49er football, somewhere in the 90s, something like that. But I'm hyped. I'm ready for the regular season just because of the limited clips that we're getting out of minicamp and some of the, videos and statements that we've heard.
Yeah, it's nice. It's finally something real talk. It's not all this hypothetical BS that we've been having to go through and will they, won't they, and all this. We got a decision since the last time we talked about the center position and all this kind of stuff like that. So we're actually some real football and tangible evidence to talk about, which is fantastic.
It is fantastic. I want to say what's up to those that were here before the show, at the start of the show, and active in the chat. Raphael 5629ers, Charles Thurman, Treasure Kisses, 916 49er with the clever use of the icon, the emoji, whatever the hell you want to call that. Shoe show coming soon. Steve-O in the building, Niners 209 football, and Chris Royal with the super chat. Looking forward to the show, gentlemen. Randon, I have one question for you. What's your favorite muscle car? Thanks, Rob. Keep killing it. If you don't know why this came up, Randon, it was a topic of conversation on the mailbag yesterday. And I threw in, wait, let me see if I can still pull it up. I threw in my favorite. There it is. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. 1970 GTO Judge in Orbit Orange. That is what Chris is referring to. We got everyone else in. I got people leaving me comments on the YouTube page, trying to send me photos of their cars. I had one person with a 67 GOAT. I mean, I'm all about it. People keep telling me your favorite muscle cars. I know this is Niners. I know we're keeping it 49ers, but cars and food are my side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge car person, but I've always had a affinity for Eleanor from Gone from 60 Seconds. That's just a beautiful car.
So gorgeous.
67 Mustang, what is that, GTO? And it's just the perfect color. I like that dark gray, color to where it's not really black to where you see all the blemishes. It could just kind of hides a lot of the stuff well. Not that you would ever want blemishes on a car like that, but
no, you would not. Yeah, but, the GT350 Eleanor is a beautiful ride.
So I've always had an affinity for that, and just kind of have that nice little muscle look with the good back end. I'm a booty guy, so that back end's pretty nice.
It is all about the back end, isn't it? Niner Empire 541 with the 73 El Camino reference. I dig it. Absolutely dig it. All right, so let's get into the topics here today, Ren. And we obviously have the NBA Finals game coming up tonight. I'm sure that some of our audience are a bunch of Warriors fans and will be tuning in at 6 o'clock. So we want to make sure.
If anybody takes their eyes off this channel for the Warriors, you're done to me. You're done.
You heard him here first. Randon is not tolerating.
Goes the viewership. No.
It's unrealistic in his book to favor an NBA Finals game above Between Two Beards. I mean, one of them is happening in real time and you can be a part of it, and the other one's just a basketball game. So I feel like it's clear which one you should be watching.
Yeah. Do you think they love you like I love you guys? Come on.
Absolutely, they do not. Let's talk a little bit about Deebo Samuel to start this one off. He is at the mini camps. He is present and accounted for. Do you see this as a healthy indication that the ongoing negotiations may be headed in a positive direction? Or do you believe that this is a Marshawn Lynch situation where he's just there so he doesn't get fined?
I think it probably could be a little bit of both. And I think the big thing for me was Trent Williams' presser and him saying that it shows a lot of maturity on Deebo Samuel's part. So I might be inferring that Trent Williams thought the previous actions from Deebo Samuel were immature, and now he's maturing up after he said Deebo sought him out for. He said, "I'm never going to put my nose in his business, but if he asks me my opinion, I'm going to tell him." And so maybe he did that, and then Trent was like, "Man, it's going to get figured out. Just go to camp, be the bigger man, and just show up." And he did. Like, he's not on the field as far as it for real practices, but he's not injured, and he's just out there not wearing a jersey. So, I just think that he's his normal self. I mean, 90 grand, still a lot of money for what he's making as a second round pick. And, he's out there showing, and obviously he's been effective in the locker room. Trey Lance said it yesterday in his presser that it's not the same without Trent Williams, Deebo, and Nick Bosa in the locker room. And it just really has changed the dynamic of what it is in that locker room there.
Yeah, that was one of those statements where, it almost fits on the Captain Obvious commercials where it's like, you take out your top 3 players in Bosa, Williams, and Deebo, and we're just not the same team at that point. It's just got a different feel. I agree with him. Without those 3 players on the field, the 49ers are not one of the same teams, not one of the Super Bowl competing teams, not one of those teams competing for a Super Bowl, better way to phrase that. I am taking this as a positive as well. I do think it's interesting to read into Trent Williams' comments there. I didn't get that sense that I didn't interpret it the way that you did, but now that you bring it up, it makes a little bit of sense that it's sort of an underhanded way of saying that, hey, I'm glad that he's treating the negotiations the way that he is right now. Because, I mean, let's be honest about it. I'm not going to criticize Deebo Samuel a whole hell of a lot for using.
He should get all his money.
He should. He should get everything that he deserves, and he deserves a freaking extra large bag with, additional hot sauce in it, right? He deserves everything he's going to get and then some. And I don't blame him for using all the leverage available to him. Some of that leverage players are realizing is their social media accounts. They can apply pressure to the organization through their actions there. I will say I'm not overly fond of it. It seems like taking the nuclear option when you could have still been having cordial conversations through your agent where you're still communicating the idea that, like, hey, that last offer that you sent to me was kind of insulting. Like, I took that personally, and I think you can do better than that. If you communicate that same sentiment without emotion, now you can negotiate. Now you can say, okay, we understand where you're coming from. We can see why you might view that offer as substandard. Where do you believe you are? And it just is much more of a civil dialogue. When you go the nuclear option, as was chosen in this case for a short period of time, it causes the uproar that you saw. Fans don't know what's going on. The organization is now all of a sudden on the defensive. So I do agree with Trent Williams that showing up to camp and not practicing, as you wouldn't expect him to practice, was the mature thing to do.
And he's not the only one. Shavarius Ward didn't practice. I mean, they said it was for health, and it's only June and all this kind of thing like that. And I'm reading Gold-Blooded's thing in the chat there is like, I'm not all with this these stunts from early on. People mature. I mean, and people regret things, and I think we've all regretted things in life and how we've handled a situation in the moment with with maybe more emotion attached to it. Who knows if it is just him missing money and this is all just him putting a smile on and he's gaslighting all of us. But I mean, from taking it at face value, what did I see right now? I mean, it's a good step in the right direction. And I think that with the news coming out about the Cooper Kupp signing gives another dollar amount that the Niners can go at. And it gives another dollar amount for Deebo's agents to be like, hey, like, this is like the third person signing for this amount. This is kind of where we need to be at.
Yeah. Hey, the market has reached a certain level. Deebo is one of the best wide receivers in the league. He needs to be paid as such. It does. It is another. What's that?
You see it, 3-year, $80 million, 75 of it guaranteed. Almost fully guaranteed for a wide receiver with an ACL tear. So
that's a lot of guaranteed money. That is a lot of guaranteed money. What's funny to me is how wild it did get. And now that Deebo's out there, it's sort of like it never happened, right? It's as if that whole kerfluffle never occurred. He's acting, the same carefree, jovial individual on the sidelines as he always has. Teammates describe him as being unchanged. But there was definitely, There was a period where it was very awkward, and now we're just kind of pretending that like it never was. That to me is sort of wild to go from one extreme to the other.
I think we've all had that moment when like you show up to like a party the next day and you're all happy or whatever, and your friend's like, "Do you remember what happened last night?" And you're like, "No, what happened?" You're like, "Well, I got something to tell you." And it's like the same thing. It's like Debo just did all this stuff, and then he's like, "Hey, I'm showing up to camp." Like, "Hey, what's going on, guys?" Like, "Hey, what's going on? Are we not throwing the football around like with the, hey, okay, fine, I guess not. I'm sure, whatever."
Right. Now, interpreting the two, when you look at the fact that he obviously isn't practicing yet, but did in fact request a trade and stated as much that he didn't want to play for San Francisco. Now he's here again, not practicing, but here. Do you view this as a situation where Debo still doesn't want to play for the 49ers, still would rather be traded? Or do you get the sense that it's much more about being paid the right amount of money to step back into the San Francisco area?
I think it's probably B. And the reason being is that he kept in touch with all his friends. Like you saw him I don't know, Jason Brett was barely a Niner. But he's like Shavarius Ward's talking super kindly about him. He was on the court side with Debo. Like he's doing all this kind of like, he must be the greatest dude of all time. Yeah. And, but he's hanging out. Like Trey said that he talked to him during the offseason and worked out with him, even though we didn't see video of it, which, if it's not official, if you don't see video nowadays, but he said he did work out with him. Like he must have chartered a flight out there and called himself Money Pickle or something like that to get him out there, not Trey Lance. But, it's something that it shows that he's still in touch with all his teammates. It shows that he still likes and is well liked in the locker room. And, a division rival wide receiver is going about a different direction. I didn't hear anything from DK Metcalf all offseason, and all of a sudden he's not showing up. And, he took the fine and to make a statement. So, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and maybe you might not like the way Debo went about it, and me included, but it was effective in knowing where he stands. Will it be effective in getting his money? We'll see about that.
Yeah, and I tend to agree both with what you just said there, which is I'm not terribly fond of the way in which Debo went about it. I also agree with the notorious GAV, who says Debo did nothing wrong, in my opinion. I agree. He did nothing wrong, quote unquote. I don't think it was wrong of him to use leverage that was available to him. I do still find it to be a bit of a regrettable action. It just, again, felt like the nuclear option, and it didn't seem like you had to go that far, that fast, so early in the offseason when we all knew that the 49ers would most likely be getting this deal done in July, as they have historically done with all of the big contracts they've done underneath the Lynch and Shanahan era. It wasn't wrong of him to do it, and I do think, to Trent Williams' point, showing up and not causing that disturbance is a more mature way to go about it.
I couldn't agree more. It definitely shows where this is going, and I think they get the deal done. I would assume so, and I wonder if they're just waiting for the quarterback that shall not be named, Voldemort, to be off the team, to maybe tear up the deal like they did with Aaron Donald and give him more money this year to kind of like balance the whole scales out. I wonder if that's part of what the contract negotiations have been going on, and they're just waiting for that money to come. Because as soon as Mac left, they signed all the draft picks so that way they could show up to camp. And now I think maybe the next step is, if Jimmy's gone, then they can give him more money this year and move it forward instead of just paying him the $4 million. Because like I said, he's in his late 20s. This is probably his last huge contract, unless he stays in healthy into his young 30s. But that's not usually the case with aggressive style runners. And so, maybe they're going to give him more money this year and kind of level the scales out in the contract itself.
And I've heard that suggested as a reasonable approach to a guy that plays as physically as Debo does as well, that front loading the contract in this one particular case could be beneficial to the Niners, as opposed to their typical MO, which has been to heavily backload these contracts to take advantage of the rising salary cap. I think there could be something to that. It would seem to appease Debo from what we know of his desires in getting paid. I do agree with Thomas Luttrell coming in. Debo playing a simple game of catch with Shanahan's boy is just aces to me. I'm still waiting to see actual video of that. I've heard about it. I was watching Jack Hammer's program earlier to get his updates on day 2 of the minicamp. And he mentioned that as well. Said he was trying to get some footage of that, but somehow missed on it a little bit. I'm going to try and find it, though, because you got to see if young Shanahan has an arm and whether he's a future quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, Coach Shanahan would love that, would love to bring in his own son to compete for quarterback.
His son better be bigger than his dad, though.
Amen to that. All right, let's transition a little bit to talk about the center position. Obviously, since our last show, we did have the retirement of Alex Mack becoming official, and that would seem to indicate, with the very few, if any, moves made by the 49ers, that they trust their in-house candidates. And Jake Brendel seems to be the favorite going into it. They've known for a little while, the 49ers and their front office have known for a little while that Mack was retiring, and they didn't really make any corresponding moves. I'm not going to count signing Donovan West as a center, as an undrafted free agent, as really making a move. Potentially, if they view someone like Burford as a center, that could be viewed as making an investment in the position. But do you now interpret it as being Brendel is the plan going forward? That given the other moves that either were or were not made, are you viewing this as Brendel's job to lose at this point?
I don't know if they knew about Mack until later on, just to be honest. Because if they did know about Mack, then they could have made like a free agent acquisition. Right. They could have done that. But like, if you don't know about Mack, then you can't go out in free agency and pick anybody, because if Mack stays, then you're not going to pay a backup center heavy money. So no, like they could have not have known. Like, I mean, it could have been up in the air. And based on Mack's sentiments, is like, hey, like if I would have won the Super Bowl, like I would have retired it right after the season immediately. But like it took a while for me to determine whether my body was willing to go through the rigors of another season. And so maybe the fact that the longer he was on vacation, the more he realized that the less you wanted to play football, or like I don't know. Just felt good to be resting up there in Ireland, drinking them Guinness. So, or he put on 30 pounds of beer weight, and he's like, I don't feel like getting this off. I have no idea. But, for me, it's like they've done a lot of these things where you look at like Brunskill, like used to be a tight end and then like gained all this weight and now has played all 3 positions. I mean, a lot of people forget that he played 8 games at center a while back. And then you have Brendel, who has played multiple positions across the line, both who haven't had astounding careers. I mean, right, the Brunskill was from the AAF or whatever that was called. And, Brendel's more of a journeyman who was on like the second team and everything. And there was a good point made on one of these podcasts that typically they only suit up 7 offensive linemen on game day. So are you really going to go get a guy that's like a pure backup center? No, you need versatility. He has to be probably a guard center or a tackle guard, or, to where guys like you mentioned, Donovan West only plays center. He's 296 pounds. Is he really big enough to play guard center hybrid? Is there really a guy there? And Brendel has shown the versatility. Brunskill has shown the versatility. So maybe those are your 2 centers there. And they both can play guard and center. And maybe you have a lot of the guys like you talked about in Burford. If Brunskill has to move in, then Burford can play guard and tackle, and same thing with Jalen Moore. I mean, I think maybe they're going for more versatility rather than a designated, guy, so to speak. I think you're right. And on some level, there's comfort in that, because it does feel as if the Niners are well insulated at the position, that they have a lot of capable backups, a lot of guys that might be able to take that next step. But that might word is a big one for me. It doesn't feel as if there's a clear-cut answer, one that I can rest easy thinking that's going to be our center. Much like if you had gone out and brought in a dedicated free agent, you would have said to yourself, they check that box. Even if it were, someone with injury concerns like a JC Treader, you would say Pro Bowl caliber center coming in. Okay, I can rest easy.
when there's someone who was on the team the year prior, never really got any shots to prove themselves, and so went through the season as a relative unknown, I can assume that the front office is right about his ability to step in, but it's just that. I'm assuming. I haven't seen with my own two eyes, and that still leaves me a little bit nervous about what the transition is going to be like.
Exactly. I think with our running scheme, it's more about the sum is greater than the individual parts. And
That's a fair point.
So, I think they do a lot of these things where it's like, okay, the guy next to you, you're picking up blocks and doing all this kind of stuff. And eventually you're going to have to get cheaper, right? Like
Right.
if they brought, like
You
if
have to.
Lynchy got a huge pay bump this year, the Trent Williams pay scale is, I think, increased this year. And so where does that money come from? Obviously, Laken Tomlinson, that money you were paying him goes way down for the rookie contract of Aaron Banks.
Right.
And that contract goes way down for Brendel. And then you're paying another guy in Brunskill who's making like backup money to play right guard. And so, like, where's all that money going? Well, it's going to Warner and yada, yada, yada down the line. And so, like, are you getting, it seems like we're getting good value out of Banks, which, we could hit later in the podcast. Getting good value out of Brendel here could be the savior of the offensive line, and maybe not the detriment that maybe a little people think it is, but you are right. Like, the trust factor has to be seen. Like, yeah, it's seen or it's talked about, but everybody talks about people glowing. Like, no person.
Right. What are they supposed to say? Like, no, he's trash. He's really not coming through for us the way we had hoped.
And it's not like Trent Williams said, like, brought up his name. He was asked about Brendel. So,
right.
Like, he's not going to go like, hey, yeah, this guy effing sucks.
Right.
He's a teammate. What I do like is that he said he's an extra coach in the room.
Yes.
He's that knowledgeable. And with the fact that Shanahan's system and the blocking schemes and picking up guys, the smarter you are and like knowing where the blocks are going and where the holes need to develop might overcome some of the physical or drawbacks that might be from Brendel. But then all things are concerned from the combine. He's kind of a physical freak when it comes to some of his numbers. So I don't really know where we're going to land on this. Maybe we might have a closet, Pro Bowler in the making.
And you never know. I mean, it is all about players stepping up when they get their opportunity. Next man up. Shanahan said in his presser yesterday, you don't list a player as a backup if you're not prepared to start him. I will say that doesn't inspire a huge vote of confidence from me, because at one point in time, Hronis Grasu was our backup center and then had to be thrust into that starting role. And so when he comes to mind as someone that they trusted to be the backup center, it doesn't inspire a huge amount of confidence. But I do like Williams' comments that you're referencing, going through and saying, yes, he had these amazing numbers coming out of college in the combine. He was extremely athletic, and those things are translating to what I'm seeing here on the field. And potentially the most important thing that you've already mentioned with the center specifically in Shanahan's offense is the level of intelligence, his knowledge of the system. And it shouldn't be overlooked that he spent a fair amount of time last year running with the twos that included Trey Lance. So as far as the center quarterback exchange, they've had a fair amount of practice, and you would assume there'd be some chemistry there.
Which is what we all thought like they should do to go out and get a center to get a guy that is going to be there for Trey Lance for multiple seasons. Now, Will that be Brendel because he's 30 plus? Probably not, but it could be for the next, throughout his rookie contract, it could be, or maybe it's just for 1 year and Donovan West, puts on 20 pounds and he becomes the center that a lot of people thought he should be drafted at in the third round. But at least for right now, the chemistry's there, the relationship's there. Trey Lance mentioned it as well. And I think it's reasonable to assume that this offensive line might be better than we think that it could be.
I agree. I see Strider 3006 coming in with a prediction. Rob, I think the line will go Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Daniel Brunskill, and Mike McGlinchey, with McKivitz coming in for Mike if he isn't healthy. I have to say, at first glance, in looking at the way in which they've been lining up for minicamp and OTAs, I think that this prediction is pretty spot on. The only question I would have is, by the end of training camp, does it swap out for, if McGlinchey's not healthy, is it Jalen Moore, McKivitz, or even Justin School coming back in and laying claim to his swing tackle spot that he had claim on before getting injured in the preseason last year?
Yeah, I think McKivitz is probably a good pick because Williams referenced him and the fact that he thought he would have done a fine job in the NFC Championship game if he couldn't have went. So he flat out mentioned his name.
That was a fascinating comment by Williams about his ankle, just how severe that injury was, and the idea that he probably shouldn't have been out there, save for the fact that it was the NFC Championship game.
He flat out said that he thinks probably a healthy McKivitz with 2 healthy ankles would have been better than him with one. And he said it wasn't healthy until the draft. Like, that's a long time after the season. That's a fair amount of time that passed in between the last game and the draft.
Do you view that as, I feel like that's a little bit of Shanahan's kryptonite, is like he really, once someone has earned a position, it felt like he did that with Jimmy Garoppolo. Instead of going to a healthy Trey Lance, you have Jimmy Garoppolo with a thumb hanging on by a thread. And it's like, well, Jimmy got us this far, so we have to stick with him at this point. I got the same sense as far as putting Trent out there, keeping him out there in the second half when it was obvious that he was laboring to stay out there. Do you think that's a character flaw, that Shanahan should probably be a little quicker to go to someone who is healthy as opposed to saying, well, they earned this position, I'm going to let them keep it?
I don't know. I mean, Williams is the best, maybe the best player in all of football.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so like if he says he's not coming, like if he's like, oh yeah, I'm good to go, or I'm still playing, like then you keep him in. Like Jimmy G isn't the best player at anything. So like, I mean, to go to Trey Lance healthy, especially after the Houston game, wouldn't be far off. Like,
right.
Could you imagine the outrage before the Rams game? Like, oh, we're starting Colton McKivitz. Like
that would, and had we lost by the same margin at the end, fans would have lost it. They would have said, well, if you had only put in Williams, we would have won that game.
But it was by far his worst game. But it was by far his worst game. Yeah.
It was. And yeah, I get that. And I think you're right that you just can't possibly at that point. You have to roll with Trent as long as he says he's good to go.
Yeah.
Let us transition to the next topic around the hype train. Woo, woo. It's time. All aboard the hype train. Hold on. Let me get that comment off of here. Get that comment out of here. Let's talk about Drake Jackson. Let's talk about the rookie. So we had a couple of good comments that came out today from fellow defensive linemen talking specifically about Drake Jackson. Now, this is another case where there was clearly a beat reporter attempting to garner quotes for an article on Drake Jackson because he asked about Drake Jackson to everyone that he had an opportunity to put the question out there to. So it's not as if Samson Ebukam and Nick Bosa just started gushing about the rookie, but gush they did. I mean, these were some pretty significant statements. Samson Ebukam's was great. When asked about Drake Jackson, he said, damn, he's good. I mean, it was a dramatic pause. There was a lot said to it. He goes on to say he's going to be a key factor in this defense. I've watched him run all these drills. He's big. He's physical. He's fast. He's pushing me. He's pushing others as well. And then he went on to say that he's a sponge. He soaks up everything from those around him and learns quickly. It really gets me excited about what this defense can do when they have not only a bookend opposite of Nick Bosa, but what that then does is it makes every unit after slightly better, because now you have Samson Ebukam bumped down to that second unit that's coming in to refresh Bosa and Drake Jackson, assuming Drake Jackson's able to land that third down pass rush specialist role right off of the bat. But we are just deep. I mean, it doesn't even bring in Kamoko Toure, right? Who, when we signed him, I said was a fantastic signing that maybe put a Band-Aid over that need for an edge rusher, that the 49ers didn't have to go edge rusher first in the draft if they didn't want to, because now they had Kamoko Toure in there. They've got Jordan Willis. They've got Charles Omenihu. They've got Samson Ebukam. They've got Drake Jackson. They've got Nick Bosa. It feels like 3 platoons of very solid edge rushers.
It does. And I think these comments are indicative of like what coaching can do for a player, right? Like, so you look at, in USC just seemed like a mess, right? He was 265 his freshman year, his best season statistically. They switch him to like a stand-up outside linebacker rusher and put him at 240. He was unable to like bull rush anybody, and he was getting washed out on some of the runs. But his bend, which is something you can hardly teach to somebody, you're either flexible or you're not most of the time, is elite. And so he has a lot of these elite traits. So is the coaching, I felt like a lot of the comments was like, he's a sponge. We see a lot of the freak skills, and he just needs to learn and needs to learn. And the fact that he's learning from the best with arguably the best pass rusher in the game and one of the best or the best defensive line coach in the game, if his intangible is he's a great learner and he has some traits that it's hard to teach and you can teach him the other ones, it seems that the stock is going up, and all he needs to do is get his weight under control, because going from 240 to 270 in a matter of months was, I think, dumb on his part. I think he should have put on healthy weight, but I'm not there. I'm not a personal trainer for him, but just based on the reports, and then like what he's showing now with the hands and all that kind of stuff like that. I mean, I think it's positive. I don't expect him to be. Everybody's like, hey, I think he's going to get 10 sacks, 15 sacks. No, I don't expect him to be that way. I think a lot of the other stuff that we're going to talk about later show that maybe he's a little farther down the depth chart. But if you focus on what I said with the fact that if USC didn't like move him around all the time,
right,
and he didn't have such a downward junior season, you could be possibly looking at him as a first round pick. Like
absolutely.
He was on some people's boards. He almost could have been a guaranteed one. So the Niners could have lucked out and bet on the fact that they can develop defensive linemen.
I think Chris Kosarick is a godsend for this team. Absolutely. I want to bring in Strider 3006 comment here. Rob, do you believe their words about Jackson, or is Grant Cohn's take more accurate, that he's having a hard time winning one-on-ones? I think both can absolutely be true. He can be wowing his teammates with some of the things that he does and struggling in the one-on-ones, because that was the criticism of him coming out of college, was not a hand technician. He's not Nick Bosa, right? He's not going to win those up close battles with offensive linemen. That is the area where he's going to need to improve. And that was an expectation of mine coming into it. But where he has impressed his teammates and where I believe he'll be able to use his natural skill set to win in pass rushing situations is his burst off the line of scrimmage and his bend. Nick Bosa talked about that specifically. He said he does things out here that I couldn't do as a rookie. Now, I'm sure there were a laundry list of things that Nick Bosa could do as a rookie that Drake Jackson can't, but he specifically talks about his bend, his mobility. He's young. I think that gymnastics background, he can bend really well. And he talked about the fact that if he can just keep building and getting better, he's going to be pretty scary. Reference the idea that he's surprised someone of that caliber, of that talent level, was actually available in the second round. Although that comes after him admitting that he didn't know who he was when the 49ers drafted him as well.
I feel like Bosa is just in his own world all the time.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, who? Like, I didn't watch any of the draft this offseason. I was on my boat and working out with my brother and getting down from 4% body fat to 3% body fat. So who? I just met him today. So
dude,
yeah.
Bosa standing at that podium makes me feel bad about myself, Randon. When he puts his arms up on the podium and those muscles, I don't even know what the name of those muscles are on the side of his arms, but those muscles alone are probably bigger than the diameter of my entire arm. And it makes me feel attacked when I see Nick Bosa, especially when he throws those abs out there. I'm like, damn it, Nick, just put those things away. It's not fair to the rest of us.
Quadzilla, you're hurting everybody else around you.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I agree with Tom Bragg here. It's almost as if the 49ers have two quality starting defensive lines that you could take their backup four, put them on another NFL team, and they would most likely start for that team. I also like Lee Ving's comment about keeping Armstead inside. We now have a glut of bookend pass rushers to put on either side. You can now keep Eric Armstead where he does the most damage, and that is inside, hopefully alongside a healthy Javon Kinlaw.
I think you're going to see Drake Jackson kind of have a Subson Ebukam type season.
Yes.
Where he might struggle in the beginning. Like, he has one move, which is the bend move, going around the outside, running the loop. Well, as soon as he starts learning more moves and counter moves, you're going to see his, repertoire start to increase. You're going to see him be comfortable at 265, 270 instead of just rushing that weight up. And I think that you could see him really go into his own, where he'll be a force to be reckoned with the latter half of the season.
And that would make sense, right? As he gets more comfortable. Samson Ebukam specifically talked about, the game sort of slowing down for him wrapping his head around the playbook. You would think for a rookie that would be the case as well. I would look at having him as a third down pass rush specialist if I were put in charge of the San Francisco 49ers, much like Aldon Smith in his rookie season. Keep it easy on the young gentleman at first until he gets his feet underneath him. Speaking of young gentlemen with high upside, a certain Trey Lance has apparently been stacking together quality days at practices. So over the last 2 days, we got some of the stats that came out there. Randon, you referenced in our conversation beforehand, 4 touchdowns and a pick, the one that bounced off of Brandon Ayuk's chest yesterday, correct? And then today, Trey Lance completed 10 of 15 passes, 2 deep touchdown passes, 1 interception that I think went to the undrafted free agent, O'Neal. And the 49ers literally wrapped up the day on the 2 back-to-back deep completions, 40-plus yards in the air, first from Trey Lance to Ray McCloud, who's apparently impressing, and the next one to Jordan Matthews, which I will admit, I'd forgotten that Jordan Matthews was on the 90-man roster. I'm sorry, Jordan. Jordan, I'm sorry. It won't happen again.
Jordan, the journeyman.
Yes. He earned his way onto that roster, and he deserves to be there. And who knows? I mean, maybe he will be a viable candidate competing for the second tight end position with the log jam that we seem to have there. But Kyle Shanahan specifically mentioned Trey, specifically called out the fact that he is stacking positive days. D'Amico Ryans came out to say defending him has been tough. He's putting the ball on the money. The accuracy is there. The deep ball is there. I'm excited for Trey. He's setting himself up to have a really good season for us. I mean, I was listening to Matt Mayoko's podcast on my walk earlier to get a little bit of sunshine because we're finally actually getting summer around here in Portland. And he was talking about reminding us that, yeah, Trey Lance was an accurate thrower back in college. Small sample size, the one season, but did have a 67% completion percentage that year. I mean, I'm getting a little bit hype, but do you think it is too soon for me to be getting that hype? Or is it the appropriate level of excitement because it's Trey Lance season?
I think all of the above. And so for me, it's like I'm hyped about it because he's executing at a high level of what he's being asked to do right now. Right. So he's being asked to do 7-on-7s. He's executing. He's doing with a little bit of pass rush. He's executing. He's throwing the deep ball. He's throwing the ball in stride. He's trying to fit it into tight windows, and then you're looking at the interception on Ayuk wasn't his fault. And then the Leon O'Neal, he roasted Leon O'Neal twice before that. And by all accounts, if the receiver could have beat Leon O'Neal to the interception.
Right. Someone specifically called out, had that been Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, most likely the receiver would have come down with that one.
Now, if you're trying to fit into a small, and I'm not going to make excuses for Trey Lance on that. Like it's an interception in the book. Right. And, but for me, I'm encouraged with it. I really like it. Like the last thing you wanted to have happen was the fact that if he came in here and is struggling, but he seems to be thriving on every single level, the leadership level, on the field level, the confidence level. Like there's really no nitpicking that I see that I want to see more of. Obviously, it's not pads. It's not preseason speed. It's not even game speed, but it's what he's being asked to do. He's executing that, and that's to be encouraged.
I am, first of all, want to call out Frank Hanna coming in from France. I love it. I love the international flair. Also love Orchid's comment here talking about watch that O'Neal kid. He's got game. Jury's still out for me on Leon O'Neal, but I am excited to see any undrafted free agent putting up some good film in the hopes that they can earn themselves a roster spot, whether it is here or another team. I'm with Tom Bragg here. Trey continues to confirm what I have been expecting from him all along, and the best is yet to come. I've seen nothing out of Trey this offseason that would lead me to be pessimistic in my view of what he could accomplish this season. I'm not expecting anything yet because I think expectations is a surefire way to disappointment, but my hopes are up. My optimism is there. And I think that the evidence supports being optimistic about the young gentleman, especially given the transformation in his attitude. And I've got to give credit to Brian Griese, who clearly has had a positive impact on Trey Lance. Trey credited him with talking specifically to Trey about how to be in front of the media, how to be the quarterback of a franchise like that, and talking from experience, a guy who has been through it, real world experience. It's easy to listen to people when they've walked a mile in your shoes.
Finally the narrative is changing on him. And Good Morning Football, was it Good Morning Football America? Is that what it is?
I think just Good Morning Football. GMFB.
Yeah. So they were talking about it, and he said like the high once they decided to go to Troy Aikman and Griese was kind of let go. They said that like he took this job instantly, and everybody around him and all the sources saying like this is the perfect job for him. Like he's not that he's not good at being on the mic, but like being a teacher and doing all this kind of stuff from being around him, like this is the perfect job. And like there really is nobody better to teach Trey Lance how to be a man at that position. Like he said, it's not about him throwing where to throw or how to throw. It's about conducting yourself as the quarterback. And not that Trey Lance didn't already have the leadership traits, but this is only going to help him, grow those at a faster rate, at a more durable rate, and stronger roots. And I'm all for it.
Me too. I mean, it clearly, whether it is because of Brian Griese or whether Trey made that progress on his own, there is a night and day difference between the way in which Trey is carrying himself this year. And as a leader, I look for those traits. I look for someone who has the command and presence to garner the respect of those around him. Speaking of respect, John Lynch talked about specifically Trey Lance having a bit of an uphill battle in that regard, in earning the respect of the locker room because of the guy he was taking over for. He said something along the lines of Trey has a tough job in replacing Jimmy because he was so well liked and respected in the locker room. And he specifically mentioned Jimmy's toughness in that regard. And, it's interesting to me to hear the organization talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, to hear the players talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. Trent Williams came out and referenced Jimmy always being a brother from this day forward. Clearly, he was very respected within the locker room. It just felt like, to me, an ideal time to talk about the idea of transitioning for the 49er faithful, transitioning to a point where we talk about and treat Jimmy Garoppolo with a little bit of respect. Like, I have always been big on that respect, but he is now very clearly on his way out. It strikes me as an opportune time to say thank you for what you did to this with this organization, to say thank you for helping lift us out of that 2017 season and what that felt like, to inspire this organization, to lift us and propel us forward into what we have become, which feels like a team that's competing on a regular basis. And I understand that he reached his ceiling and he was no longer helping us progress to that next level and didn't seem capable of winning in the biggest moments. But it doesn't stop me from wanting to wish him well wherever he ends up and speak on him with respect when I reference Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like look at it as like a breakup, right? Like,
yeah,
hey, you're in a long relationship, you're living together in a house with this girl or this team or whatever, and then the writing's on the wall, like they trade up 3 and it's a breakup, but you're still living there. Like, so you're seeing this person go in and out, you're seeing this person every single day, and from what all accounts were, as messy as a situation it was, he handled it with non-Tannehill like verbiage and was a lot of presence in the locker room all the time. Like you can nitpick his play on the field because that's easy to do, but like the respect that all the players give and that, that they still talk to him highly. And like Trent Williams, like had a real smile, like a real joy in his face about like when his name was brought up. And it's just like, I think they really like him. And that's something to be said,
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, I'm frustrated as a fan. Like we were 1 quarter away of winning a Super Bowl and to where I actually remember it in my lifetime. Like,
right.
And we were a couple plays away from going to another Super Bowl. So like, I get it. So
I agree. And it has happened before. Daniel Garcia pointing out, kind of like when Alex left and was doing well in Kansas City. Fans showed him some love. And two things can be true. Two things are true for me. I agree with Last Second Sports, Jesse here in the building talking about Trey Lance. Lance is him. Some people are later to the party than others. Everyone will know soon. You can feel that way about Trey Lance and still say to yourself, hey, I'm going to be grateful to Jimmy for what he provided to this organization. I'm not going to sugarcoat what Jimmy was or what Jimmy did, but I'm going to treat him with respect on his way out. The locker room seems extremely clear on holding both of those truths to be self-evident. Amongst the Niner faithful, I get that it's easy to throw punches at someone who's on his way out. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the way in which I want to support my team, the way in which I want to represent my organization.
I mean, you had Niner fans contemplating not watching football, before he was brought in. Like, we had no wins. Like, I mean, so it's just I understand. It's something good. And we were winning games, and I'm going to remember those seasons. I don't remember any Super Bowls. The beer makes me look older than I actually am. And so, I don't remember a lot of those. The last one we won, I was 7, 9. So it just really isn't there. And these are some of the best seasons that I've watched, in real time. I'm always going to remember it, but I'm ready to move on to Trey. I'm ready to show both those things.
100%.
And I'm super excited. I hope Jimmy succeeds anywhere he goes, except for if he goes to the Seahawks this season.
Yeah. Oh, no. If he's in the division, I'm sorry, Jimmy. You need to lose when you play the San Francisco 49ers. No matter where you end up, when you play against San Francisco, the only quarterback I kind of half-heartedly rooted for playing against the Niners, I'm not going to lie, was Joe Montana, because I was pissed. I was pissed that the 49ers screwed that up and lost the greatest quarterback of all time. So, yes, I other than that one instance where he came back to Candlestick and was throwing it down, I'm rooting against Jimmy when he plays against the Niners in the future. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of those targets that are going to be catching passes from Trey Lance, specifically the wide receiver 3 spot, Jajuan Jennings. He is clearly impressing those out there. You had both Jimmy Ward and Coach Shanahan. No, sorry, Charvarius Ward and Coach Shanahan praising his route running. We already know he run blocks like a grown-ass man. That was a fact that he established on the field last year. If he is now separating better than any other receiver out there, according to Coach Shanahan, are you expecting big things, a big leap from Jajuan Jennings this season?
I think I am. And the reason is even though Shanahan said that Ayuk has had his best training camp, by all other reports, he hasn't. And you think that Charvarius, it might have been a slip up, but he called Ayuk inconsistent. It was in not that straight verbiage, but it was pretty much when he's there all the time, or something along those lines. I don't know the exact verbiage, but he pretty much called him inconsistent. Or when he feels like playing, he could be a number 1 wide receiver. Where Jennings is showing up every single day. And for a lot of people, only really think of separation as vertical separation. You see Justin Jefferson or, Tyreek Hill, but there's separation in the short routes, how you set up opponents and getting to those slants and using his big body. Jennings ain't going to burn anybody, but is he able to get the short yardage open? Because I think we really need a red zone threat from the wide receiver position, because Debo didn't catch any within 5 yards. Ayuk had a couple. Kittle was really not there. So is Jennings going to be that guy to where, the Niners were one of the top teams in the red zone? So are we going to continue that throwing the football, or is it going to be running the football? If it's throwing the football, Jennings has the skill set to be that threat.
Yeah, I see Jennings as absolutely having locked down the wide receiver 3 spot. It was interesting to hear the praise of Ray McLeod recently, especially after today's performance. But I do wonder if he'll have a significant uptick in receptions and yards from his season last year. And really, it's only because I've painted myself into a corner, Randon. I have predicted Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle to have 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and there just aren't that many footballs to go around. And so at some point, somebody cannot double their yardage. And so to me, Jajuan Jennings has to be the odd man out there as wide receiver 3. I see him taking a step forward from last year. I see him as having earned that wide receiver 3 spot. And I think he will continue to be a clutch guy delivering on third downs and in the red zone. So he'll have significant value for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm just not convinced that he's going to eclipse 500 yards receiving, right? I think he's probably going to jump up to somewhere in the 400-yard range.
So I believe if I remember correctly, the number one, third wide receiver was either Van Jefferson or Tyler Boyd, and they were around the 800 or 900 mark. If you look at 800 yards, is 47 yards a game. So you obviously have some positives, some negatives there. We're going to run a little bit more, but that doesn't seem unattainable for Jajuan Jennings. But where I really think is if he is at 500 yards and maybe 7 or 8 touchdowns because of the red zone threat and that leverage that Travarius is talking about, is even greater value because that's where points are coming from. Like the red zone needs this. The red zone needs to be as effective as it was last year. And whether that's running the football or having more effectiveness in the passing game, it needs to be there. And I think that you could really see something with Jennings progressing, right? And you see a lot of that with Kendrick Bourne, right? Kendrick Bourne was really good at setting up a route runner. He doesn't have that straight line speed, but he's a really good route runner, can set up corners and make those key catches for first downs, which Jennings did. And if even just a 100-yard progression or 200-yard progression, a little bit of touchdowns is going to be a solid wide receiver 3 in the league and exactly what the Niners need.
Absolutely. He can help this offense run at peak efficiency because those are high pressure downs, right? Third down in the red zone. If he can contribute there, even if the statistics don't wow you at the end of the season, even if he doesn't come close to sniffing that 800, 900-yard mark, he could still have a really huge impact on this team and their offensive efficiency, the ability to put points on the board and to keep the ball on offense, keeping the defense rested there. Bringing in Jaguayo 56, sneakerhead here on the channel with the super chat. Rob, hoping Trey develops with a young offensive line and wide receivers. It is, when you look at the offensive line, it is young in some spots, but certainly not at left tackle. You've got Williams over there who, by the end of his contract will be 36, I think. And then you're looking at, Daniel Brunskill, middle of the pack there as far as age, Brendel, middle of the pack, but you certainly have youth in all of the backup positions. You have youth in Aaron Banks, and you certainly have some youth in Mike McGlinchey, although it's not entirely clear that he'll be around beyond his 5th-year option. So that would be exciting to have cohesion. I'm not sure I see that just yet. I hope it develops. I hope that it becomes clear as day who the starting 5 are, and they become a starting 5 that we might be able to have for the next season or 2, because I do believe that operating together as the offensive line builds that cohesion even more. The wide receiver room does appear to be young, and they will be able to grow alongside Lance as long as we can retain that talent. Who knows if we'll be able to re-sign Brandon Ayuk when he gets to his second contract.
It's short term, and I think we have the right. I think short term we have the right weapons for Trey Lance to take the next step in development.
Yeah,
but pulling out the crystal ball, Trey Lance is going to outlive if he plays to his level, his peak. He's going to outlive any of the players on the roster for the Niners, right? Like he's going to be there into his 35, 40-year-old age where quarterbacks are going, and a lot of these other players aren't. So the wide receivers and the O-line now are going to hint his development, and then hopefully he's the quarterback that it doesn't really matter which players on. He's going to be carrying these young players, right?
Right.
Like Aaron Rodgers going from Jordy Nelson, then to Devontae Adams, and now to Christian Watson or whoever. That progression going into different eras. You have Peyton Manning going from Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, to different players, and so it's just something that Trey Lance, I think we have the weapons for him to develop quickly. And then he needs to be the quarterback that helps develops the new guys that come in and the new cores that run in. Because you're exactly right. If we pay Debo, chances are we can't pay Ayuk. So then who's the next wide receiver that we draft and develop? Is it Danny Gray or is it to be determined?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be what we're going to see going down the line.
That's a great point, that assuming Trey is the guy that I believe that he is, that I think you believe that he is, that certainly the 49ers hope that he is, he will then begin to elevate those skill players around him. I share Jason Walsh's concern, though. I'm a little nervous about the line because we've seen from some of the greats in the NFL, that's the one position group that a great quarterback still can't really elevate, right? Like you look back at some of the seasons where Tom Brady struggled, where Peyton Manning struggled, where Aaron Rodgers struggled, where Russell Wilson struggled for multiple seasons and then wanted to leave town. Andrew Luck retired from the damn game because you couldn't protect him. That is the one unit that really does need to gel and offer a bare minimum of performance in order to allow Trey Lance to become the weapon that we believe he will. But to me, it's just a little bit of nervousness. I'm just waiting to see when the pads come on, when these players can prove who they are. I need to see them up against good competition, not just hear the front office say glowing things about them.
He's not a statue. Like
No,
he's not.
He's not.
And so he's mobile and let's pull up a player who we've battled against for over a decade in Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has never had a season under 33 sacks. Never. Like, and his offensive line was considered good in his beginning of his career. Like,
most definitely,
we're gonna have to live with sacks. Like, we're gonna have to live if Trey's gonna be making plays with his legs, we're gonna have to live with sacks. And so we just hope that Trey can elevate his game to a high enough level to where the sacks don't ultimately hinder us. Like, where Russ and Wilson, when the game really counted, he didn't seem to get sacked. He seemed to get those 10 to 12 yard scampers and throw the football downfield and do all those things. Why? Because I think we beat him only twice in his entire career or three times. Like it wasn't a lot. And so I hope that Trey Lance can elevate his game to the next level to where the offensive line isn't really that big of a deal. To me, the offensive line, if they can run block and we can be one of the best running teams in the league, and Trey Lance can do a little bit of his scamper and get the ball out on time when it needs to be, we're going to be a deadly offense.
Yes, good enough. That line will be good enough to allow us to be deadly. I agree with that summation. Let's talk a little bit about Samson Ebukam again. I mean, yet another dude that stands at the podium just looking yoked to all get out. He
was definitely wearing a schmedium.
Yeah. It was hugging him. It was hugging him tightly. That's for sure. You mentioned this as specifically calling out that, hey, the 49ers chose to send Samson Ebukam to the podium, right? That's not just a random occurrence of like, hey, we're going to draw names from a hat. No, they put Samson Ebukam out there. Does that appearance at the podium signify that the 49ers have greater faith in him and he may be a little higher on that depth chart than most people are giving him credit for? Do you think he potentially starts out the season as he ended last season, opposite of Nick Bosa?
I think so. I mean, it's like they didn't choose, they chose him for a reason. They didn't put up Toure. They didn't put up any of the other guys, the Minicamp that had, a high win rate and everything. They chose Ebukam. And so I thought that he might be the cap casualty because he has a lot of unguaranteed money. And if we needed some dollar bills, he might be the one that gets chopped for that.
Right.
And why? And so we mentioned it, or I hinted at it in the Dre Jackson, he said that, hey, I was doing the moves and I was getting going there and they just weren't working. And I just kept at it and learning. And D'Amico Ryan said he was learning the position. And as it slowed down for him, he was able to take it to a next level. And so I really think that he might have the inside track to the starting job. Is it his to keep? No, because I think that a lot of people in that realm, like Toure and Amenihue, are all within striking distance of him, but it's different. To be given the job to start and having to lose it versus taking it away from an incumbent starter like he did last season. It's a different fight. And
it is. Because then if you end up even, you're probably holding on to that starting job, right? Yeah. Someone has to literally leapfrog you and show that they're better to grab it.
And so obviously he's yoked. You saw video of him squatting like an elephant in the offseason, 800, 900 pounds or whatever. The bar was literally bending around his shoulders. And so to me, it shows that he's developing. It shows that the Niners value freak athleticism and their ability to coach players up, because that's all they do. Amenihue, freak athlete, Jordan Willis, freak athlete, Drake Jackson,
Right.
freak athlete. Hey, we'll get guys with intangible traits that were given to them by whatever you believe in, and then we're going to coach them up.
Yeah, we're going to coach them the hell up. I like that. The non-denominational, whatever you believe in. Whatever you may believe in. I like Randall Riley coming in here. This D-line is coming in waves to opposing quarterbacks. Going to be fun to watch. Yes, it is. I enjoyed what Ebukam had to say himself up at the podium, saying the more comfortable I became with the play calling, the faster I can play. Because there was a notable difference between the first half of the season or his first, 8 or 12 games, something like that, where he only amassed 1 sack. And then I think it was Eric Branch, potentially, who was asking this question in the pressure, pointed out that he had a half sack or more in every one of his last, 7 games over the last stretch of the season. And he was asked specifically what clicked for him. And you said it. He said, I just kept working. It is that lunch pail mentality of like, I've got the skill set. I've just got to get comfortable within this defense. I've just got to play a little bit faster, stop thinking so much, and just do what comes naturally to me. And a lot of that has to do with the coaching that they're getting from Chris Kosarik.
What an uncomfortable question that was. Oh, I was like, geez. But like, to move on with that, like the theme of this episode seems like comfort. Trey Lance is getting comfortable. We saw Armstead moving inside, got more comfortable. Ebukam's getting more comfortable. Drake Jackson will be a beast when he gets more comfortable. I feel like I need to get underneath a nice comfy blanket because I'm feeling kind of comfortable.
I'm feeling real comfortable. Chris Royal is comfortable sending in the super chat. Sneakerhead here on the channel. I agree with Randon. Well, thanks for that, Chris. Trey, I'm kidding. Trey's athleticism should help negate a stuttering O-line. He gets hit and sacked, unfortunately, but he'll definitely extend plays. Yeah, it certainly will lead to a few additional shots on the young gentleman. Hopefully he can mitigate those as best as possible. Try to eliminate as many of the unneeded hits as he can. But he should be able to step out of the pocket. And the longer he plays with that offensive line, the more cohesion there will be with the way in which he moves versus how they block. Like they will begin to understand what his default move is when he feels pressure on his left and be able to block accordingly. I do think Trey's mobility is going to play into staying upright, extending plays, and pushing the ball down the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at you just look at the athleticism for the offensive line. Like when he played certain games, the holding penalties, he went up a little bit because there is a point where you have to know he's leaving and then you just let go of the defensive player and know that he has the athleticism to break outside. Right.
Right.
And now, even though he didn't run his 40, people are, suggesting that it's somewhere around the 4.7 range. Like Mahomes is 4.8, like Aaron Rodgers is 4.9. Like he has enough mobility to make enough of a play. And that's all you really need. Like, yeah, he's going to take hits because as we saw in the AFC Championship game, Patrick Mahomes took sacks.
Yeah.
Burrow took sacks because, Burrow's offensive line was atrocious.
Right.
But
Burrow plays behind Swiss cheese.
But they took sacks because they're trying to make a play. Now, whether you like that as a fan or not, or you want the guy to stand in the pocket and throw missiles from every direction, it's irrelevant now because Trey Lance is the guy.
Right.
But eventually you're going to see this year, Trey Lance is going to run. If he gets uncomfortable, he's going to run and try to extend the play.
Yeah.
Will that change down the line with him getting more comfortable as a quarterback? Sure.
Absolutely.
But this year, you got to expect him to take some sacks, but you're also going to see some wow plays.
You are. And some of those are going to be him rolling out to his right and throwing a 65-yard touchdown. So if I've got to put up with a couple of extra sacks a game to get that occasional deep touchdown that we never would have gotten without that athleticism, I'm going to say that's a fair trade-off, right? I will take that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, a couple sacks for a touchdown. I mean, you're going to get those things. And like I said, Russell Wilson, his best season sacked is 33. Like he's upwards in the 45s, 48s. I think he hit over 50 multiple times. I took down the page of his stats. Nobody would say that he's a bad quarterback, right?
No.
Those
were all 4,000-yard seasons, right?
So it's going to happen. And that's part of that. And I think
yes.
I was trying to pull up the sack leaders for last season, but I got a random page. But it was I think Patrick Mahomes had a lot of sacks. So there's a lot of these guys that are going to have sacks, and it's just going to be part of it. My thing, the running game needs to be more effective and consistently because with if it wasn't Elijah Mitchell last year, we didn't run effectively. And so, we really need to have that be more consistent and just let Trey make some plays at that point.
Yes. A great defense, solid run game, and allow Trey some time to develop. That is the recipe for success this year. Let's hit the last topic here, Randon. Let's talk a little bit about Nick Bosa. Now, Bosa's not bothered. That could almost be a title to any Bosa topic, right? Like, Bosa's just not bothered, period. Like, put a period at the end of that statement, and it's just a true statement about Nick Bosa. He just doesn't seem to get riled up about things. Like, even when he's excited about something, he's pretty monotone and like low energy. And just
I got a boat. That's how I spend my time. I got a boat.
got a boat in the off season. I'm out there on the water, man. It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Yeah. I've been at this diet for a couple of years now, and I'm in shape.
It's pulling teeth for the beat reporters. I feel for them because they ask some like well thought out question that seems like it's not going to be a 1-word answer, and it gets answered in 2 words. And then Bosa gives a blank stare. I mean, I know it's intentional. I know that, he's just attempting to answer the questions respectfully while also not having to delve too deep into any one topic. And hell, he may not enjoy speaking with the media, and I couldn't fault him for that if that were his preference either. But it did come up, and what we're talking about here specifically is Bosa's contract. It has now come out definitively that there are no ongoing conversations at the moment, but Bosa's not concerned about that. And so it's just in contrast to how we saw the little situation play out with Deebo Samuel. This one comes across as someone who trusts in the process a little bit more and maybe didn't get an offensive offer to begin with. I'm not trying to downplay, how Deebo took offense the way in which he did. This is just the other side of the coin. He talked about, I'm sure I'll be notified when the contract negotiations do start. And then about specifically, is he worried about it? He said, no, I'll let my agent worry about that. I'm focused on my diet, working out, and, showing up and showing off my freaking quads and arms at the presser, making Rob feel like less of a man in doing so. So that's Nick Bosa's way of going about things. And I've got to say, like, as far as negotiations go, it seems like the healthier way to go about it. It seems like there's a better outcome will come of that type of negotiation.
Now, there's 2 things here. First, and this is what you just said. I think there's really I think it's just his personality. Like,
yes,
it seems like it seemed like the Bosa's just like they're a tight family. They're from a football family. They just take care of their business and move on. I think that's just his personality in general. So I don't know if it's, just it's going to benefit him or not. But I think Bosa's thought process, like, hey, if I get 23 sacks in this year or 20 plus sacks this year, I'm making $30 million. Like, there's no way they're not going to pay me. And if they don't, somebody else will. Like,
right.
And so, I don't think he's just like, I just got to handle my business and I'm going to get paid because I was I think he was 4th in the league in sacks. He was rookie of the year. Like, he's putting up accolades left and right. And if he can put 2 healthy seasons together, like, he's going to get his 5th-year option picked up. And for the number 2, that's going to be quite a bit of guaranteed money. And like, everybody out there is like freaking out. Like, oh, they haven't. It's like, okay, he's in his 4th year and he has a 5th-year option. Like,
right. He still has this season and next season under contract.
Like, they'll get him where he needs to be. Like, and I don't think Bosa even wants that right now. Because what if another big pass rusher gets a payday? It's only going to benefit him.
Yeah.
Right. And even with an ACL tear this year, his 5th-year options picked up. And if he has a great season next year, like, he's going to get paid. And,
yes.
Knock on wood, the injury, I didn't mean to throw that out there into the universe. But
no, right.
But it's the truth. Like, he's that elite to where he's going to get paid regardless. So
he is. I also
maybe not 30, 35 million, but I mean, if he's healthy and throws up, he's a sack leader this year, he's going to set the market and it's going to be ridiculous. He's going to be the second player over 30 million. That's not a quarterback.
Yeah, you would think so. It seems almost assured. I like what Cam says here. Cam Jr. coming in with a comment. 2 different situations. I want to call that out because I think Cam is absolutely right about that. And part of the reasoning for that is what Randon just succinctly laid out there, which is that Nick Bosa does still have an additional year under contract. So he actually has less leverage in the situation because the team has 2 contractual years that they can basically force upon him. And because he was the second overall pick, he's getting paid substantially more in those 2 remaining years than Debo would in his 1 remaining season. I don't mean to completely compare the 2 situations, and I'm not attempting to bash Debo, although I appreciate how it could come across in that way. I suppose I'm attempting to illustrate my belief in keeping emotions out of business negotiations. I can appreciate why Debo took it very personal. He plays the game very, with a ton of heart. He puts all of himself into the game, and therefore it may be very difficult for him to remove himself from the equation. However, my guess is after he goes through and signs on the dotted line, he will take away from this situation that next time around, it's probably better not to let my emotions get involved. Like, just let my agent handle it. If it comes down to the wire and I still don't like the contract, maybe then I go the nuclear option. But just letting things play out and trusting in the process a little bit, allowing your agent to do what you're paying them their freaking 10% for.
Yeah, I mean, I think he get fully guaranteed at second position. I think he's getting paid like top 5 average at his position, which after all the mega contracts that has been released, is probably 22 to 25 million fully guaranteed for his 5th year option. Like, it's going to be good money. And so, people are like, oh, we're not going to be able to extend these guys. Well, Samson Ebukam's contract this year has no effect on Deebo Samuel or Nick Bosa. Jimmy Garoppolo, the only way it would affect is if they can roll over that money to next season. But for this season, it doesn't have anything to do with their contract. So it's just, for me, I think Bosa's like, yeah, like it's way too early. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'm just going to play my game. Like, people who get up, it's just the old adage of like, you can only get mad at things that you can control. And what Nick Bosa can control is what he does on the field. Yeah. Like you said, he's paying his agent good money to do this for him.
He can control what he does on the field, what he eats, and apparently magically control his own body fat percentage to get it down to whatever damn number he wants to.
He's probably just got a dial right here. Cyborg.
It is. I mean, that guy is just pretty ridiculous. He does strike you as the cyborg type of individual. But hey, I'm happy as long as both of those men get their contracts, because they both deserve to be paid at the top of their field. And we need both of them on the San Francisco 49ers in order to make the run that I think we're capable of this season. So I hope both contracts get done to the point where each player, Debo and Bosa, are thrilled with the outcome. They feel as if they've been respected. They feel as if they have been paid commensurate with their level of production, and they can go out and rest easy and put their heart out on the field as they have done in seasons prior.
Yeah, all you can do is what you can control, and Bosa and Debo have done that. All-pro defensive player there, so you just got to leave it up to the agents to get their job done.
Talking about things you can control, Jason Walsh is in the background saying the Serenity Prayer. Yes, indeed.
Serenity now!
Yes, indeed. And Cam agrees. We definitely need both of them. Yes, we do. We need all the help we can get at this point, because we're on the cusp, ladies and gentlemen, on the cusp. And with the way Lance is going to perform this year, we've got every chance to make a run deep into the postseason. All right. This has been a phenomenal show. It's 6:15. I know all you guys have the game on in the background. You're watching Celtics Warriors already. I know you want to get to it and turn the volume up on that. And in order to do that, we have to stop talking, because if Randon and I keep going, you probably leave that on. We're on the big screen. You got the game on the little screen. I know you want to rectify that.
You can't watch basketball on your cell phone.
You can't. You got to get that up on the big screen and get these mugs off of there. So in order to do that, we will bid you adieu. This has been a fantastic show. Randon, all of your information is down in the description. We've got a link to your Twitter. We've got a link to your YouTube page for Cerberus Sports. And I'm definitely going to be having a program coming up tomorrow. Got the Sneakerhead call-in show at 5 p.m. coming up. Any big collaborations or hockey royalty or anything on the docket for you, good sir?
Yeah, I've been focusing much more on the hockey royalty. I just had an interview with Corey Pronman, one of the head scouts for The Athletic for hockey.
Nice.
So that was on there. Had Scott Wheeler on last week. So definitely a quality week or a quality couple of weeks getting some quality guests there. And then I have a scout from Sweden coming on in a couple of weeks to talk some Swedish prospects. So
for good any of you that follow hockey or want to follow hockey, go tune in to my man and get educated. Absolutely. I appreciate Randall Riley, Sneakerhead, here on the channel, sending that message. For those of you still here with us, before you go watch that NBA Finals game, thanks for a great show. He says, Ronnie, lot that like button. Yes, hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you haven't. Someone subscribed earlier. I think I'm only
that
like 40
got
subscribers.
A concussion if Ronnie Lott hit it.
Yeah, it would destroy that. It would be absolutely gone. Nick C88 was a new subscriber. I'm that much closer to 7,000. I think I need less than 40 subscribers. When I looked before the show, it was 39. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Get this channel to 7K.
Let's do it.
Other than that, hell of a show, Randon. Thank you, as always, for being on here, good sir.
Oh, thank you, my bearded individual.
Yes, indeed. We will be back next week. Same bat channel, same bat time, between two beards. Until tomorrow, cheers, faithful.